I'm documenting the build of my RANS S21 Outbound plane. First, a little legal disclaimer. These are not instructional videos. I'm a first-time builder, and I'm just documenting how I built my plane. The content may have interest to others. In this video, I continue the build of the fuselage, and I install the rudder cables, the window support, forward top skins, baggage floor, and the Station 4 baggage closeout. My build hours to date at the start of this video are 490 hours. That does not include time on the computer researching, ordering products, etc. That's actual build time. And I'll do a summary update at the end of this video. With that, let's get started putting those cables in. The first step is to run the long rudder cables through your pulleys at Station 8. They run all the way up the tail cone, and then you run them through those grommets. You do, on a note, you have to pull those grommets out and then run the cables through the grommets and then put the grommets back in. The hardware won't fit through with the grommets installed. And then you've got a short amount of cable leading back to your rudder. The next step for a tail wheel is to install the tail wheel rudder steering cables. They go through the bottom pulley, which is part of the assembly if you put the tail wheel assembly together. You've got some clasps on the forward side that go in. Just be careful. Each side uses 3 washers. There's a washer in between each one. And then they go down on the inside of the pulley, which seemed counterintuitive, but I checked it a couple times. They go down through the bottom of the tail cone and exit out, and there's a cotter pin there that holds them. So I'm assuming these cables are going to get held up tight by the tail wheel. And the rudder cables I've just left hanging at this point. And that's the cable installation and mounts. Okay, the next thing I'm going to work on are these window support angles. And they tell you to refer to figure 0707. I need to skip some of this above because I'm waiting for some avionics and wires to run, and this closeout, this tail cone closeout, is done after you've run the wires. So the angles, I've seen other builders put these angle supports in without problem. They tell you to refer to figure 0707, which is this one. This is the angle support here. They'll tell you to fabricate it from KPFU 0748, which is the stiffener angle, number 26 on page 7A02. It's a stiffener angle. And you're going to cut, so there's a flange that goes underneath the bulkhead and then angles up. So you're going to cut out this section of material here, and this flange is going to get bent up. So I've got it measured, measured and marked to be cut. This is my cut here. This is the material that will get pulled away. This will be the flange that gets bent up on an angle and laid on the longeron. I've got my first window support in. You can see I've cut this at an angle with the longeron. The flange comes out here, and you've got to cut the material, and it's just clecoed in right now. Comes up to the top. I've got the angle cut up to the top part of the cage. Counter drilled, match drilled from the inside, from the gusset out, and I'll clean up all the holes. And I've got to prime the top because it comes in contact with the cage. We'll prime it, clean it up, and work on the other side. I was working on the second angle support when I saw a video from a builder who recommended holding off match drilling here and up here on the cage gusset until you put that top skin down. He also recommended drawing the center line to this support, because when you bring the skin down and it's got the pre-drilled holes, you want to make sure those holes are somewhat near the center of this support. This can actually slide back and forth a little bit, which will change the exact angle of this bar. And he said you can more closely match up the pre-drilled holes to the center if you hold off marking and drilling this angle cut here and drilling this in to lock this in place. until you've brought that skin over and made sure this center line lines up with those pre-drilled holes in the skin. So I'm going to do this one that way. The other one I'm already sunk in there, and we'll see how well those skins line up. I did install my top skins with Clecos, and I put the forward top skin on. I had to move my Clecos to the inside, holding that frame attachment. And as far as the support angle, I took a marker and I marked my holes where they were on that inside support angle. I did that on both sides, and in both cases the holes came up pretty much in the middle of that support angle. So my fear of installing that prior to measuring the holes turned out it was okay both ways. I can still see why that if you don't like where these holes are, I still would have the ability to move this angle because I haven't Clecoed or riveted this one. According to the instructions, that support angle should have been riveted before I put these tops on. But I did see one builder have to replace the support angle because he riveted it in the wrong spot. So I do like the idea of putting your top skin on first, checking to make sure your holes are lined up. Now I'll take the skins off and I will rivet, I have to prime first and then rivet those support angles into. Well, the last week has not been very productive as far as the build, as I'm in kind of a research phase of the project right now. The manual wants you to start riveting and closing up the top skin, and they really don't go into a lot of the avionics, antennas, and wiring for your tail cone, which is what I know I have to get done before I close up the top. I have my magnetometer mount installed. I've got the installation kit, but that's got a 9-pin harness to run wires. You know, running light wires and things that you got to power on the ground. That's I've looked at the wiring diagram, and the 9 pins, I'm not even sure what goes in them. They've got names for each of the wires. So I'm in touch with my avionics panel company. I did just order my panel and try to figure out what they're going to wire and what I need to wire. I also ordered an ELT because we've got the ELT is going to go back in here with the ELT antenna. The Navcom antenna's got to go in. The transponder antenna's got to go in. My magnetometer wiring's got to go in. Wires to the tail light, that's fairly simple, but that's got to go in. So I'm in the process now of figuring out what I need to run, where it gets run. I understand there's a separation of wires that has to occur to prevent interference. So a lot of study and research. Being a first build, this is a lot of new stuff for me. And I know the panel company is going to build a lot of this, but I got to figure out what I can run or what I need to run because they're not going to come out here and install it. They're going to send me the panel. So I'm in that part of the research. Today, what I'm going to do next, and I may do a little filming, is I am going to get the top skin on it. I'm going to do my skin curls where they come in contact. I think I can rivet or not rivet, but Cleco and drill out my spine to the top. I've still got to deal with some stringers that go from station 4 up to here, and I've got to figure out what those are. I've got the side tops to do, pull those in, some match drilling here. So there's some more fuselage work, tail cone work I can do prior to figuring out all the avionics. So this is one of those areas where I'm right on the tip of my ability, but I think for the next couple of days or a day or two I can work on this top skin and getting things set up until I get some avionics. I've put my top skins back on and Clecoed them in and watched the RANS video that Eddie Gill puts out about this section. And we're in a good spot right here. This is kind of what they did. They've got this forward top skin in place. They recommend clamping it and hold it in place. Clecoing, I'm going to add some more Clecos. He's got a Cleco in every hole. And then making sure this support bar on the inside has a Cleco holding it in place. And then they just, Eddie match drills these and then match drills along here for the side skin. So I think we're on a good place and what I need to get done next. I have match drilled the holes along the angle support and Clecoed them in. And then I've also match drilled the holes along that middle longeron. Longeron, is that a French word? Longeron. I've match drilled the center, but you've got to drill those from the inside. And I used a block of wood to support the skin as I was drilling through. And remember, these last 6 holes, you've still got your clecos in from the other side. That's what holds your frame and your tail cone together. So I removed those one at a time as I drilled them from the inside and then replaced them as I went along. The next step is to match drill the top holes. I've got both sides of this top skin drilled. I've got it up on the angle brace. And remember, you've got the 3 up in the corner here that attach to the cage. So those are drilled. I've match drilled the 3 that are on that support tab on the inside. These are, of course, are attached to the cage, and those are drilled. The next thing I'm going to take the top off, the top skin, and we're going to deburr everything, clean it, make sure the edge is formed here, and then we're going to work on the top holes to here to match drill. The RANS website's got a pretty good, Eddie does a good job showing using a clear Lexar to locate the holes, and that's the process we're going to use. Okay, I'm at the point where I'm going to match drill my forward top skins, and Eddie at RANS recommends taping on a thin mylar coating and then marking the holes. Therefore, you can lift the mylar up and slide the skin in and match drill this section of top skin that doesn't have any holes. The issue I've got is that there's a bulkhead under there, and I'm not going to have the bulkhead holes lined up perfectly with the top skin because you can't cleco them, otherwise you can't slide the skin under. So I don't want to oversize that bulkhead hole by missing it exactly. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the bulkhead back so it's out of the way of the hole when I drill it. The bulkhead already has holes. And then when I cleco it back together, I'll cleco all 3 sections, the top skin, forward, top skin, tail cone, and then bring the bulkhead in and cleco it that way. I've got my top forward skin holes match drilled. The plastic, I think it's called Lexar process that Eddie described works. I couldn't find the 12-inch or 24-inch pieces. I tried Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. I did find some 6x6 pieces, so that's why I've got separate pieces taped on there. But the process is still the same. As long as you've got a piece covering the holes that's taped here and marked, it doesn't matter that there's separate pieces. So that all worked, and I think we're on to the stringer holes in the top skin that have to be match drilled to the stringers underneath. Well, I'm bouncing around the manual a little bit, so I'm trying to move forward with things while I'm waiting for avionics. And trying to double check to make sure moving forward can be done without having the tail finished up, the tail cone and the skins and everything else. So I think I'm in a good place. I'm doing sides, I'm going to do the bottoms. Right now I'm doing the aft baggage compartment, and as long as that's screwed in so you can get access to it later. So those are the things I'm working on, and that's why I'm jumping around the process of the manual a little bit. The aft baggage section starts with putting these side baggage parts onto the middle longeron. You remove the longeron support bracket that's on the other side, and then you need to transfer drill these holes. They tell you to use a hole marker. I didn't have one, and there was one online for like $50, but I just made one. I took a couple pieces of aluminum. I put a short roof nail in there, put a second piece in here, riveted it with a couple rivets, and the concept here is I'm going to be able to, let me get if I can get it, I'm going to be able to slide this underneath, drop that peg into the hole, and then where I've got the matching hole on top, I'll be able to make a mark, and that should be exactly where the hole is to transfer drill. Then I also took the bottom pieces and riveted the support braces to them. There's 2 of them. There's one there for the left side, one there for the right side. So after I get the transfer drill done, then I'll get these bottom pieces in. Then there's some nut plates that have to be drilled out. You've got to transfer drill one bottom to the other bottom and put them together, and then and that's after you clamp them in. You transfer drill them, and then you work on the nut plates. So a bunch of not that complicated things, so I'm not going to film all of it, just kind of going through the process with you. The aft baggage floor pieces, I should have filmed this while I was in the plane, but you rivet some stringers to the floorboards. Then you put the two pieces in the baggage area. It sets right in there. And you line up the front edge, and they actually say line up the aft edge so it's flush with the Station 4 bulkhead. And you get them all fit, and you clamp them, and then you counter drill for the holes, and then you rivet the two pieces together, which is what I'm doing now. The next step is to attach some nut plates into the aft baggage flooring. These are these small nut plates that have some machine screws to hold down your baggage floor. There are 16 of them, I believe. I've attached the ones on the cage. You can see them attached here and attached under here and on here. And that's the first step. Oh, you use a smaller rivet. You use a 3/32 rivet. So I had to change the head on my rivet gun. Make sure you use the right rivets, of course. And then I think in the floor part, we actually have to drill the holes for the nut plates. The first thing I did was mark or drill the locations for the nut plates. I actually made a mistake. These two in the back are not correct. So I'll have some small holes there after I take them out. But I think the closeout will cover them up if not. But they were actually handy to drill first because it actually marked and held my floor in place right against that back edge. So even though those won't have nut plates, it actually, I'm not sure I am against doing that. It did it nice because marking these on the side with the bending of the aluminum was a little difficult to keep the whole thing in place. So you've got two that go into the S3, S4 supports, which are down here, three that go into the side panels, which are up here, and these will be the center holes for the nut plates. So these will get drilled out to a larger, right now they're number 40, so those will get drilled out. Then I'll take the floor out and I'll get the nut plates installed into the sides and into the frames, etc. I've drilled out the center nut plate hole to a number 11, which will fit the screw, the machine screw for the nut plate. I'm going to hold off installing the nut plates just in case I've made an error on placing these. I'm going to work on my Station 4 closeout and see the fit. I'm a little bit worried that maybe that rear nut plate hole may come in conflict with the Station 4 closeout. So I think I'm going to work on the plastic 4 closeout, and then I'll put the nut plates in when everything seems good. Cutting into this S4 closeout is a little concerning because, boy, if you make a mistake, you got to order another one. I can't imagine having this shipped. So it does say cut a little conservatively and then work down. If in reading the directions, not 100% clear on exactly what they're saying. So I watched a couple videos, and I'm going to start with the bottom cut and the side cuts. And they say to leave an 1/8 inch flange. I'm cutting it to a 1/4 inch just to start. There's my rounding. So I'm going to cut off these sections using a 1/4 inch flange right here, and then work it back in. And so this section goes, this bottom section goes, and it looks like this section goes, stopping here. I made the first cut along the side and along the bottom. And at this point, it doesn't even come close to fitting in there, which I'm okay with. It looks like I'm going to need to trim the top around. And so I'm going to top that and then do a trial fitting. So after my first trim, it is a little bit big, which is what I expected. And I think the most obvious trimming is right now is the sides where I left the 1/4 inch lip. I called for an 1/8 inch, and that's keeping it from dropping in. So I'm going to trim the sides, and then I'll just keep working on the trimming around until it fits in. I've also determined that the nut plate location is going to be okay. Where I've got my clecos, there's not going to be any interference. So I can go ahead and finish the installation of my nut plates as well. So I'll kind of close out the S4 just by trimming and fitting it in and doing the nut plates. I have fitted in my aft baggage floor and sides. I've got the nut bolts nut plates in. I don't have it screwed all the way in. You see some of the screws sticking out a little bit, but it's all in position. I'm working on this S4 closeout. I took a break for it to get the floor in to make sure it was going to fit properly. And I'm struggling a little bit with these tabs on the side. With this support beam coming down, I've seen some cut this material away fairly high up. I can't seem to get this in without, looks like cutting this material. But I think I saw Project 2 Arrow. He's got his fairly flush along here. And that just doesn't seem like it's going to fit. So I'm reaching out to the forum to kind of figure out my cuts on the side. I don't want to overcut it, but I can't figure any other way to slide that back into place without cutting more material off of here. And then when it sits down at the bottom down here, there's going to be a gap if I cut more material. But it's clearly needs to go down further to get in there. So a little bit struggle. I don't want to overcut, obviously. I did end up cutting a notch for that support brace. It's the only way I could get that S4 closeout to pop in there with that brace there. I've seen others with a cleaner cut. You do the best you can. Building a plane is an art and a craft, and like everything else, you get better with it as you go. I'm happy with my cuts. They're not perfect, but when I first started framing or plumbing or doing other things, you just learn as you go. I'm happy with it. I think it's going to be okay. And we're going to move on now to the back cut. I've drawn my line along the bulkhead, dotted it for the curve here for that frame, and we'll cut the back and we'll get it shaped and fit it in. I'm using the Dremel to trim and cut the bulkhead, both the cutoff and the buffer. My next step, this fits in just perfectly. Cut is just right on the edge. The next step is to cut out these notches for the stringers that'll go through. So I've just marked them, and I'll cut a little notch in each one. I think the manual has you cut the whole top section off, but I've seen other builders, they just cut the notches out and it leaves a cleaner fit for the bulkhead closeout to have it just notched. RANS provides you some bushing material that you cut to 3/4 of an inch, and there's a tiny little mark here, I think it's right there, you can find it, where you're going to glue this, and you drill a number 11 hole down the middle. You cut it to 3/4 of an inch, and you're going to PVC glue it to the closeout, and there's a mark here. Okay, I've got the spacers PVC glued, and the closeout is reinstalled. My next step is we're going to put 4 nut plates along the bottom, and then 1 in each corner. They say you're not going to screw into the flange, which is back here to the bulkhead. So the flange comes up 1/2 inch. So I've measured where this will go into the bottom skin, but not into the flange. And that's where I'll put my nut plates for the screws. So we need 4 of them. You just measure your distance, equal distance apart. And you've got 4 on the bottom, 1 on each side for 6 total nut plates that are going in. And then I'm going to drill the top through here because we're going to put a larger nut plate. I think it's a 3/16 nut plate, goes back here. So we'll drill this before I take the closeout out. I've drilled through the top hole here, which goes through the spacer and then through the bulkhead. So that's all set to put a nut plate back there. And then I drilled the 6 holes in the bottom of the closeout for the nut plates. So I'm going to take everything out, take the sides out, take the bottoms out. We'll put the final nut plates in, and that should finish up the closeout. I also test fitted the stringers coming across the top with my notch outs. That all works fine, and so we're good to finish putting the nut plates in. Well, I think that's a good place to end the video. This segment of the build took me 42 hours. That brings my build hours to date to 532. In the next video, we will cover the cable exit fairings, the windows, the side windows, the stringer, top skin stringers, and then riveting the top skin. And I think that's it. Maybe we'll get into the landing gear at that point. But we'll see what content we've got, what we'll put together. And thanks a lot for watching. And remember, dream it, just build it.